This is Kenny and Karsh. We are going to be interviewing Patricia Wall. She's an author of some books. Could you talk to us a little bit about your workshop?
Well, the workshop was called Beyond Plantations, Beyond Plantation Stories and the Underground Railroad, introducing elementary students, excuse me, I've been talking, introducing elementary students to New England's early African American history.
Cool. And you wrote some books about this, and what's in the books?
Well, I tried through historical fiction to introduce young students, 3rd to 5th or 6th grade, to this missing piece of American history.
Yeah.
You know, we tend to teach a white history up until it's time for the Civil War, and then suddenly black people are part of American history, and that's crazy. And it's totally inaccurate and unjust, of course. But this way, students would have a much better understanding of how we got to where we are if we include the contribution and labor, though unpaid and enforced, of millions of black people who cleared the forests and built the stone walls and did so much in New England.
And what message are you trying to convey through your books and presentations?
Well, you know, there's 2 things that I say to the teachers, because I know their time is limited. But I'm encouraging them to use the word enslaved instead of slave, especially with the young children. When they introduce, it changes the whole concept. You talk about a human being and a condition that's imposed on them, instead of just starting and talking about amorphous slaves. And so that way, children... Otherwise, they learn a kind of racism in a way. You know?
And why do you think this is important for teachers to mention in their teachings?
Because it changes their mindset on American history. It gives them a true picture of how we got here. That all of these entrepreneurs, colonials who wanted to develop this wilderness, needed tremendous labor. And they turned to Africans and brought them over here and enslaved them.
What do you want, like, the kids to take away from the books that you have, and like
a human face, to get into a human's heart, not just see it as some vague slavery, or just generally talk about something called the triangle trade. That doesn't tell you anything about the human tragedy. And also the tremendous endurance when you look at the history of African Americans, what they went through, and yet they survived, they endured, they got there, you know. It gives us a better understanding of now if we understand how we got here. So that's my whole point. And my little stories, I didn't really intend to write a book about a black child. I was writing a history or a little story for white children, because I was a museum guide in a house in Portsmouth, New Hampshire. And you write what you know, and we had lots of information about the 18th century white children. But the more I got to know about black history in the Portsmouth area, the more I realized I was writing the wrong story. So I concentrated on Maddie and her family and what they went through in this New England setting. And then I got so interested in what might have happened to this imaginary family. I mean, it's all based on historical research. I followed them into Boston, because they go there at the end of the story, and I pick up the story in 1812 in Boston, when this wonderful community is developing on the north side of Beacon Hill. I don't know if you've been down to Boston, but they have a super black history trail.
I've heard about that. I've heard about the trail before. I've never
it's great.
Been
it's
to
great.
it though.
And there's this hopeful community that gets going and figuring out, okay, we're free now. How are we going to survive? And they succeed in building a meeting house, which becomes not just a meeting house but a school, because education for black children just wasn't available, and a cultural center, all in this meeting house, which, by the way, now is newly opened and restored. It's gorgeous. So that to show how this time of hopefulness until they bump into racism and are held back.
Very interesting.
So,
Thank
anyway.
you for taking some time.
Thank you for giving me this time.
No problem.
Okay, bye-bye.